In this video, we will set some listeners on our buttons and display some toast messages. A listener is a component that will report back if a certain event has happened. In this case, the event that we care about is a click or a tap on our true or false button. A toast message is the message that appears at the bottom of a screen, and it looks something like this. Setting a listener on a button should be somewhat familiar, since we did this already in the Dicey app. Remember how we set an onclick listener on the roll button so that it can detect when it is being tapped? When we set a listener this time around, we'll dive a bit deeper so that we can make better sense of this convoluted syntax. You can set an onclick listener on any component that's a view. So looking at our hierarchy in the documentation, we see that our button is a view and a text view is a view. So you can set an onclick listener on either of these two components. Now let's see what the Android documentation has to say about the setOnclickListener method. If I scroll down to the public methods of the view class under the Android API reference, I can find a description of the setOnclickListener method. And here we see that the setOnclickListener method requires just a single input, namely the onclick listener that will be attached to our button. Previously, what we've done is we've written all this code in one go. This time we're going to split it up to make it more clear what's actually going on. Here's how. First, we create a variable. For that, we need a type. The type is view.onclickListener. And then, as always, we need a name. Let's call it myListener. And now we set myListener equal to something. Now, to create the actual listener object, we need that keyword new, followed by what we want to make. I'm just going to type on and let autocomplete insert the rest. And let's not forget the semicolon at the end. Remember, when the listener actually detects a tap, it reports back by firing the onclick method. In programming jargon, that's called a callback. This is also the language you'll see used in the documentation. For now, let's have our listener just print a log message when it detects a tap. Okay, so now we have a brand new listener and we've specified what it should do when it detects a click. All we have to do now is set the listener on the true button with the setOnclickListener method. And for that, we simply provide the listener as a parameter. So now let's run the app and try it out. Let's see if the log message shows up when we press the true button. Aha, button pressed. Brilliant. But what happens when I press the false button? That's right, nothing. The false button does not have a listener yet. So let's fix that now. But this time, instead of creating a separate onclickListener variable and then passing it as a parameter, we're going to create the onclickListener right inside the braces of the setOnclickListener method, which is exactly what we've done before. Just type new, on, and then use autocomplete to insert the rest of the code. Voila, done. So what's the difference between the two approaches? In the first case, we have created a variable with the name of myListener and set that listener on the true button. But for the false button, we have still created a onclickListener, but in this case, it doesn't have a name. The listener on the mFalse button is anonymous. The onclickListener is still there, but you can't refer to it by name. This is actually a very Java way of writing code. And you'll see code like this in quite a lot of the documentation, as well as in people's projects. The reason why people follow this convention of creating components that are anonymous is because these things won't be used anywhere else in the project. This is exactly the case with our onclickListener. The only place it will be used is on the mFalse button. And that's why the onclickListener doesn't actually need to have a variable with a name. Okay, so now that we've understood how to create an anonymous listener, let's turn our attention to the toast messages. Toast messages are a great way of giving the user a tidbit of feedback. You'll often see toast messages saying things like, no internet connection available, or in the Gmail app, message saved as draft. Gmail shows users this toast message when they exit the compose screen before having sent their email. This is a very unobtrusive way of telling users that their email is still there and can be retrieved without tapping OK on some sort of dialog box. One way to create a toast message is like this. We create a variable of type toast and name it myToast, and then set that equal to a new toast message. Now you'd expect to write something like this, new toast. But Android has a neat shortcut to create a toast object. You simply write toast.makeText. MakeText requires three parameters. The application context, which is just the current state of the app, the text that the toast message should display, and finally the duration, or how long the toast message should stay on screen. To get the context, we simply use getApplicationContext. For the toast message, we'll just show false pressed. And for the duration, we'll just set it to short. And semicolon at the end. Now that we've made the toast message, all that's left to do is show it to the user. And we do this simply by writing myToast.show. Okay, so that's one way of creating a toast message. But similar how we created the anonymous onclicklistener on the false button, we don't actually need a separate variable to hold the toast message as well. Let's go to the onclicklistener that we put on the true button. Here we can simply write toast.makeText, getApplicationContext, truePressed, toast.length short, and then we simply write .show to chain the two things together. So here we're creating an anonymous toast message and showing it to the user. And that's it. Let's run the app. Gradle has done its thing and the app has restarted. Let's see what messages are displayed. If I press false, I get the toast message false pressed. And if I press true, I see a log message in my logcat and I see a toast message on the phone screen. Brilliant. So to recap, in this video we've learned about two different ways to set an onclick listener and made sense of some convoluted Java syntax. In particular, we talked about how to create anonymous toasts and onclick listeners. Anonymous objects are great because they can be created and used on the fly without first storing them in a variable. This is very, very handy for components that are used only once in your project. Finally, we've discussed what toast messages are and why they are useful, and how you can create one and show it to your user. In the next video, we're going to create our own custom class that serves as a blueprint for a single true-false question. I'll see you there.